Welcome to this week's America with an Accent. In my mind, the month of March is associated with strength, that of life in the form of spring, revival, and that of women in the form of rights and optimism for life. The International Women's Day falls on this month of new beginnings as well. Today, we'll bring to you an example of all strengths: life, rights, women, human being. Cindy White doesn't speak with an accent, but she speaks with great determination. Please join me in this conversation on a life without physical light, but full of bright positivity. Cindy White is legally blind. Thank you, Cindy, for being here today.
Thank you.
All right. Let's start with a question. Where were you born?
I was born here in Omaha, Nebraska. I think on my birth certificate it says Douglas County, which is always a fascinating thing when you grow up. I remember the first time I ever saw my birth certificate was when I got my driver's license. And I was pretty proud of the fact that all the things that were detailed there were truths about me. You know, my life has changed a lot since then, but I lived in a house right off of Blondo Street for most of my life, either north or south for the most of my entire 58 years has been in Omaha.
All right, and you kind of summarize your childhood and your life in a way, but a little bit more details about your background?
Sure. I have a brother that's 11 months older than me, and I have a brother that's 11 years younger. So there's quite a span between us, but having brothers has been a great thing in my life. My parents were married in 1959, and they had me in 1960, shortly after my brother. And so all I've ever known is kind of this nuclear family. My parents moved when I was going to be 9 years old, to the house that my mother presently has lived in for the last 50-some years. So I've moved very little in the city. I've always been an Omaha resident. One thing I appreciate about Omaha is how easy it is to get around in this city. You know, when I was growing up, I found out when I was about ready to start school that my father secretly had always wanted to name me Cinderella when I was born. So I always felt like a princess right here in the middle of the country, growing up in Omaha, Nebraska, as Daddy's little girl. My mother said to him, "Michael, that's a long name for a little girl. How about Cindy?" And that's what they agreed on. So yeah, I've lived a great life. I graduated from high school from Harry Burke out on Dodge Street, and spent a couple years in college. And that's what took me to Denver, Colorado. I lived out in Denver for about 7 years.
So you did move out of Nebraska for some time.
I did. It was when I was 20, and I had one of those moments in my life when I thought if I was ever going to leave my parents for even a short period of time, it would be a good time to do it in my youth. And so I moved out there, and I had an eclectic mix of jobs when I lived in Denver. I first moved out there and cut carnations in a greenhouse. I always wanted to work in a greenhouse, but cutting carnations, crazy job. When I found out people actually ate them in Boulder, that's when I really thought it was funny. I was actually, you know, in a greenhouse that was producing a lettuce form rather than carnations. Anyway, I worked in a bank for a short period of time, and then I worked for a satellite receiving company that's now known as Dish. So.
And how many years did you spend in Denver?
I spent 7 years, just about 7. I met a man, I married out there.
That was my question.
Right into that. I met a man there, and we married. We had one son, and we started listening to the news in Denver, Colorado, and realized, oh my gosh, this is a horrible place to raise a baby. So at that time, Denver was larger, population-wise, than the whole state of Nebraska. So, you know, even though the people were spread out in Nebraska, Omaha seemed like an idyllic fit. So my husband and I and Jacob, who was 6 months old, moved back to Omaha, Nebraska, and so that was 1987, and again, I've never left.
So you have one son, Jacob.
I have one son, Jacob.
And And how about your husband?
My beloved husband passed away. He due to chronic illness. He died in 2001. I have to admit, when I got here to Omaha, my son's biological father and I weren't together very much longer. We divorced, and I met a man in August of 1990 that I belovedly and still think of as my husband. In fact, he helped me raise my son until his kind of premature death in 2001. Okay. Jacob has made me a grandmother, which I thought I would never get to see grandchildren. So, okay. Yeah.
So you're a happy, a fulfilled woman.
I feel like it.
You're a Cinderella. You're a mom, and you're a grandma.
Yes.
All right.
So true.
Yes. Cindy, I would like to move now to a topic that is touchy, but I would like to go over
Sure.
it, and that is your blindness.
Yes.
Were you born blind?
I was not born blind, Enkela. I lost my eyesight in about 1994. My eyesight was caused by the fact that I did not have an immune system. I contracted HIV probably sometime in the mid-'80s. And as you might know, it depletes immune systems. And by the mid-'90s, I was pretty immune deficient. In fact, I had no working immune system due to the virus. And I contracted another virus that ultimately took my eyesight.
Was it a rapid setting or a slow setting?
You know, looking back on it, it took about 6 to 8 months for me to fully lose my eyesight. If you ask this part of me, it might be a little bit different story, but, you know, because our minds do some amazing things with time sometimes. But as I look back on it, it took about 6, 8 months. First, I had the virus that I had kind of peeled back or peeled off the maculas of the back of my eyes, so I'd see floaters. And you know, you'd blink really hard, but the floater would never go away. And so when I totally went blind, because I see no light, you know, it was pretty dramatic and it was pretty quick. The nice thing I think for me is I think when I was losing it, first of all, I was extremely angry. I was extremely angry at being alive. Why'd this have to happen to me? I never asked to live this kind of life. And then it hit me, maybe after the day that my husband came in the bedroom and said he didn't fall in love with me for me to sit, you know, in the bed for the rest of our lives together. And it was several years before his death. He said, I better get dressed. And so I made myself get up and put on clothes. It gives me goosebumps, because it was one of those times in my life that was pivotal. It was a time I had to put the pity party away. I had to say to God, hey, thanks, I'm still alive. And actually, it's a good thing that we've got going here, me and God, because I don't see any light. And I think that's actually a benefit to me rather than a liability.
Okay. I would like to go back to that topic, and we'll talk about it again. But
Good.
I see that you do have a nice dog with you.
I do.
Is it because of your? My understanding is that it is a service dog.
It
right?
is a service dog. She is going to be 6 years old this September. I got her from the Seeing Eye in Morristown, New Jersey. They're the oldest guide dog school, you know, graduating mobility specialists like Scarlett in the nation. They graduated their first group of dogs in 1929. So Scarlett comes from a good school. I went for a month to Morristown, New Jersey to learn how to be a good guide dog handler. And it's an amazing relationship. I have to rely on her to get around. And she moves me around barriers, and she gets me to an empty seat sometimes, all kinds of things. She loves to ride the bus. This is her favorite thing. You never know she's a working dog the way she's lying here, though. Huh?
Yeah.
It's all kinds of comfortable.
Now, does she ever make mistakes?
She makes mistakes, but it's not the kind you might think. She doesn't really
in
like...
guiding you, I
Yeah,
mean,
in guiding me, yeah, absolutely. She really does not like water. That sounds weird, because she's a dog, and she's a dog that played in a creek when she was a puppy, according to her puppy raisers. So she walks me around puddles, and sometimes that can be kind of crazy here in Omaha.
Yes, especially this season.
Yeah, so when she wants to pull me, because she works by pulling me, when she wants to pull me onto the grass, my first thing is to hesitate a little bit. But she can get us into some spots once in a while just because she doesn't know what to do too. And she's trained only to go by my command. The only time she disobeys me is when it's going to put us at risk. And it could put us at risk in, for instance, where we're crossing a street and I say to go forward, and she looks and sees a car come, and she will willfully disobey me, which is the way we stay safe. So she's an amazing dog.
Good dog.
Yeah, very good girl.
Very
and
good
when
girl.
she doesn't do that, that's when I'll know that she can't work anymore.
Okay.
You know, when she puts us at risk. So.
All right.
Thank you for asking.
Yes, yes. Now, Cindy, you mentioned that you don't see at all.
Right.
At all. But you have a picture of how life or how your surroundings look.
Yes,
just
I
because
do.
of your youth. How about now? How do you imagine people and facts? Do you refer to that picture that you have in your mind, or have you
Yes.
updated it, or?
Well, that's a great question, because I do have a picture in my mind. Again, it's not solely based on my previous sight. For instance, people. I hear a voice and it gives me maybe attributes of a person, but it's more like things like compassionate, angry, intense, manipulative. I can hear seemingly a lot in people's voices at times that either make me embrace the time we have together or connect with somebody. There are times, though, that it also doesn't give me the right signal, and I kind of go into a protection mode or don't ask as many questions.
Okay. How do you picture me?
I picture you, now that I know that you're 5'5", taller than me, which makes me angry because I wanted the 4 inches that you've got.
Well, I think of myself as short.
I'll tell you, and I can tell from your elbow, after touching your elbow, that you're not as heavy as me, and maybe that's the end of that conversation. I don't ever think about anybody not having hair. So when I meet men, especially, for some reason, some picture in my head, I mean, nobody is bald in my head. So I had a great friend at church, and I used to say, "Hey, Les, how's it going at church?" We'd give each other a hug.
Yes.
And one day I said to him something about, "Oh, I bet your hair got wet on the way into church." Everybody around us started laughing because I had known him for years, didn't even know he was bald. He made my hand touch his head. He's like, "See, no hair."
Yeah.
So see, I missed some of the obvious, but it can embarrass me sometimes, but I try not to let that get to me.
Yeah, no. Well, I do have a lot of hair for your,
Do you?
for your information.
I'll have to see how long your hair is. Is it blonde by chance? Or
No, it's brown.
Okay.
And since we're talking about details, most of my hair is gray like yours, but I just colored them.
See, you put yours to bed every night. I don't think you could color mine very well without spending a lot of time doing it.
Well, let's leave it at that.
Okay, that's a good thing. Yeah, because I don't want to talk about our weight anymore.
Well, yeah, and myself too. So. Okay. Another thing do you read at all? How do you read?
I was telling your sons on the way here today, I think the thing that I miss the most about from being sighted to being blind, there's some obvious things like transportation. One of the bucket list things I still have that I'd like to do in my life, because now there might be an opportunity to, is to operate a vehicle again. Notice I said operate, I did not say drive.
Yes.
Because that would be a really cool thing to be able to go out to my own vehicle, get in it, and go to my mother's, So,
Cindy, can I interrupt
yes.
you for a second?
Yes.
Just for clarification, Cindy needed a ride, and my husband and my sons gave Cindy a ride to the studio. So yes, let's go back to our Nick and Sasha. Let's go back to our question about reading. And
so the one thing I miss the most, besides those kinds of things, maybe seeing my son, my mother, those things, is reading. And here's the problem: when you read with your own eyes, your brain captures the information, and it's your own cadence, It's your own speed. If you miss a word or mess up a word, it may not stop you, you know, when you're reading along. But what I've noticed, because now I get books from the National Library Service from a website called BARD, Braille Audio Reading Download, and it's available to anyone who's got any kind of learning disability, including blindness. If in the state of Nebraska, every state has a library like this, a lending library, and I can get magazines through this library. I can get books. I have downloaded recently one autobiography from Michelle Obama, Becoming Michelle Obama, which I really wanted to read. So, but it's somebody else's voice. So if they make a mistake with the word, like I read a book recently that the narrator said Chios instead of chaos. Okay. So for the whole rest of the book, that's how it was, and it would stop my brain every time. So I really miss reading.
Okay, and what is your biggest challenge that you face? Is there a biggest challenge?
Yeah, the biggest challenge I think I face as a blind person in society today is still access. There are many things that I can't access with all of the technology I have, like somebody else. A good for instance, I can pay certain bills online, but it depends on how that vendor has set up their website, whether my screen reader will work in that environment or not. You may be able to go to it and click on it because it's full of images, where my screen reader could only read text. So anything that's not labeled still slows me down. And that creates a barrier, I think, for me. There's so many things in my life now I do have access to, like BARD and those kinds of, you know, technology-able things, but access is still. Here's a good example too of something that you might take for granted. If you go into any public space and there's an elevator, if you see up in one of the corners on the outside of the elevator door, way up high there will be a Braille placard. Blind people know they can touch that placard and know what floor they're on, but I'm only 5 foot, maybe one on a good day. Yeah. So some of those kind of things, even though I know they're there, I might not be able to reach the placard that has the Braille.
Okay.
Fascinating.
Well, Cindy, you mentioned it briefly before, and you said that there was a time that you were really down because of the handicap. Do you still have those moments when you think, why do I have to live this way?
I think the biggest time I feel down are times where another family might get to enjoy a celebration of some type, a birthday, or something that I know my husband is missing. I recently became a grandmother for the second time, and you know, it makes me appreciate and also miss those people who knew me as someone sighted are dwindling. You know, less and less people remember me as a sighted person. My son was gonna be 7 years old when I lost my sight. So I often wonder how he only has really known me as a mother, as a blind mom. And you know, kids adapt, but I think when I get down, one thing I always try to remember is that, you know, sometimes our life looks like a mess. But it can also be our message to talk about those times, because I think once we get embarrassed about something, we quit talking about it. It's the truth. And so for me to be a public speaker about my life, including my blindness, I think whenever I can, I find that fruitful, because it gives me an outlet to, you know, show other people that you can overcome whatever you put your mind to. The disability for me is the liability of the people outside of me. They think my limitations, and they react to those, not my abilities.
And that was my next question. What would be your advice on life to youngsters? Not to stop, not to let any handicap get over you.
Not only that, but what I would like to say to young people is, you know, we make mistakes in our life, but good stuff happens too. If we're only spending time thinking with this part of us and beating ourselves up over and over, we're never going to move forward. You know, if I stayed stuck back there in the 80s, 90s, you know, with one diagnosis, I wouldn't be sitting here. And so the only person that will ever give up on us happens inside our head, really, right? We give up on ourselves. So if I were to tell kids anything, I would say, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And that sounds a little intense to kids, but I think kids get it more than adults do, that life is precious, and you know, we have to spend time the way we see fit, but we also have to react to things because of our choices. So the better choices we make, you know, the less problems we'll have dealing with ourselves later in life.
And to moms, grandmas, and girls out there that may feel defeated because or overwhelmed by their lives, a word of advice to them too?
You know, Enkela, I meet people a lot of times, I hear their story and it makes me sad for them, or it makes me emotional for them. And then I hear their reaction to my story and they have the same reaction to me. So what I would say to women is, this is the time to embrace our womanhood. You know, we are showing up more and more in the places that count in our life. We're taking back our power. I think we need to have a voice, and I think for me, I always felt like if I had a conflict with somebody, I did something wrong, you know, and I think women are figuring out that if they don't ask for what they need, they'll never get it. And so to be confident with this part of me, even at 58, I think is a great thing in the present, in this present moment. I tell women not to give up. There's always an answer. I told my son for years, the things that you find important right in this moment, whatever that is, whether it's a physical thing or an emotional thing, that thing may not be with you 10 years, 20 years down the road. You know, new things will take its place. So it's about us making good choices, and especially for women, I say we need to be with each other, we need to talk to each other. Long gone are the days we went next door for a cup of sugar. What happened to us as a womanhood when we didn't rely on our neighbors?
Okay. Well, thank you, Cindy, and thank you to your girl. She well behaved today.
Yes, she does. She did exactly what she was supposed to. Thank you so much, Enkela.
Yes.
I appreciate this.
Thank you, Cindy. Immigration has multiple layers to it. It is more than just papers. Assimilating into the new society is the real deal. However, the first layer to becoming a naturalized American citizen is to have and maintain a legal status according to the laws of the United States of America. Understanding the growing number of immigrants in need of legal information and service, the English language barrier, and how complicated it is to navigate the U.S. immigration law, the New Americans Media, in partnership with the Immigrant Legal Center, both located in Omaha, Nebraska, are pleased to announce the launching of a new monthly series called Legal USA. What is Legal USA and how will it work? Legal USA will offer televised and online general legal information centered around 6 main practice areas of immigration law. In the format of questions and answers, Legal USA will air locally on KPAO TV and online at newamerikansmedia.com on the first Monday of each next 6 months starting April 1st. How will this work? For the first part of each month, we will accept questions from our viewers that can be sent to us via email at legal@newamerikansmedia.com or Facebook private message at New Americans Media. Lawyers at Immigrant Legal Center will answer general questions viewers have regarding the process of immigration law and cannot provide advice on a specific situation. This information is not intended to be legal advice. Viewers should consult a qualified immigration attorney to obtain legal advice on their issue or problem. The very first Legal USA, which again will air on April 1st, focuses on asylum and refugee status seeking cases. You can send your questions to us by March 19th. If you are not able to write in English, please send your question in your own language and we will do our best to translate. Lastly, why Immigrant Legal Center? a nonprofit organization that has served more than 16,000 cases in its almost 20 years of existence, and it has about 20 full-time immigration lawyers, ILC has a mission very much aligned with that of New Americans Media. At NAM, we aim at facilitating the integration of immigrants into American society. At ILC, Emiliano Lerda, the Executive Director of Immigrant Legal Center, describes.
Our mission is to welcome immigrants to the community by providing free immigration legal services, education, and advocacy.
And you serve whom?
We provide our services to low-income immigrants, immigrants that have a household income that is under 150% of the federal poverty guidelines. So that would be approximately $35,000, a little more than $35,000 a year of income for a family of four.
And so you serve both documented and undocumented immigrants?
So we help people that have a legal solution to be able to obtain status. So we help people that may have currently status, but they're applying for a different status, or people that don't have any status and are trying to navigate the system so that they can obtain status on the other side.
We hope to hear from you via email and see you here for Legal USA on April 1st. Dear Andy, greetings from Omaha. I have some news to share with you. We're launching a new series on immigration issues called Legal USA. Our friends at Immigrant Legal Center will help us produce this informative segment to educate our viewers on different aspects of immigration law. I'm glad we're able to do this. Personally, I think there is much more to immigration than paperwork. Adjusting, gaining a sense of belonging with the final goal of assimilating into the new society is the real challenge. However, nothing of this can happen if you don't have the proper papers and live in fear. Honestly, Andy, nowadays I'm beginning to think of myself as a concept. Immigrant, immigration, policy, wall, law, political divide, political gain, left, right, yay, nay. The whole discourse on immigration makes me feel that way. I'm sure that to some I will always be a concept, maybe for political gain, maybe for personal beliefs. But let me tell you, before being immigrants, we are regular human beings who, just like the rest, who do not carry the label of an immigrant, struggle to reach a sense of normalcy in life. Are we all good or bad? No and no. But who is? With this series, we would like to educate viewers on the right legal path to citizenship, but also inform them on the responsibilities that they have to fulfill when on the way to becoming, or already are, citizens of the United States of America. Immigration should not be a matter of division. It takes two to tango after all. But all sides, especially the newcomers, need to understand the way their new adopted country works. Wish us luck, Andy. Till next time, Enkela.